Ryan hurried down the bustling streets of Chicago, his mind preoccupied with the day's upcoming meetings. The sun shone brightly, casting long shadows across the sidewalk as people rushed to their destinations. Ryan, a successful businessman in his late 30s, wore a crisp suit that marked him as a member of the city's elite. Despite his outward success, an ever-growing emptiness gnawed at him from within. As he navigated through the crowd, Ryan's thoughts drifted to the board meeting, scheduled for later that morning. He mentally rehearsed his presentation, barely noticing the world around him. The constant pressure to perform, to exceed expectations, weighed heavily on his shoulders. Ryan had climbed the corporate ladder with determination and skill, but the higher he ascended, the more isolated he felt. Mia, a woman in her early 30s living on the streets, sat on a nearby bench observing the morning rush. Her clothes were worn and mismatched, but her eyes held a spark of intelligence and resilience. She watched as people passed by, most avoiding eye contact or pretending not to see her. Mia had learned to read people quickly, a survival skill honed by years on the streets. As Ryan approached, Mia made a split-second decision. Something about his demeanor, a flicker of vulnerability beneath the polished exterior, caught her attention. She stood up, clutching an old photograph she had found in a shelter weeks ago. With a deep breath, she stepped into Ryan's path. "Excuse me, sir," Mia said, her voice surprisingly clear and steady. Ryan, startled out of his thoughts, instinctively reached for his wallet, assuming she was asking for money. But instead of an outstretched hand, he found himself looking at a faded photograph. "I think this might belong to you," Mia continued, holding out the picture. Ryan's brow furrowed as he took the photo, more out of reflex than genuine interest. But as his eyes focused on the image, the world around him seemed to fade away. The photograph showed two children, a boy and a girl, laughing as they played in a backyard. The boy was unmistakably a younger version of himself. A flood of memories washed over Ryan, memories he had long suppressed. The laughter of his sister, the warmth of summer days spent playing together, and the crushing pain of their separation. His hands began to tremble, and he felt a lump forming in his throat. Where did you get this?" Ryan managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia, sensing the impact of her action, replied softly, "I found it in a shelter a few weeks ago. When I saw you walking by, something just clicked. I thought you should have it." Ryan stood frozen on the sidewalk, oblivious to the annoyed glances of passers-by forced to walk around him. The photo in his hands felt like an anchor, tethering him to a past he had tried so hard to forget. His sister's face smiled up at him, a reminder of a time before ambition and success had consumed his life. As the initial shock began to subside, Ryan looked up at Mia, really seeing her for the first time. Her eyes held a mixture of concern and curiosity. In that moment, Ryan felt a connection to this stranger that he couldn't explain. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means to me." Mia nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Sometimes the universe has a way of bringing things full circle," she said. Ryan glanced at his watch, suddenly remembering his impending meeting. But for the first time in years, the thought of work seemed insignificant compared to the weight of the photograph in his hands. I need to go," Ryan said, torn between his ingrained sense of duty and the desire to learn more about how Mia had come across this piece of his past. "But I'd like to talk more about this. Would you be willing to meet me for coffee later?" Mia hesitated for a moment, weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "Sure, I'll be around." As Ryan reluctantly turned to leave, he felt as if the ground beneath his feet had shifted. The encounter with Mia and the resurfacing of his long-lost sister's photo had cracked the facade of his carefully constructed life. Little did he know that this chance meeting would be the catalyst for a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself and his past. After a moment of hesitation, Ryan made a decision that would alter the course of his day, and potentially his life. He turned back to Mia and said, "Actually, why don't we grab that coffee now?" The urgency of reconnecting with his past overshadowed his professional obligations. Mia, surprised by the sudden invitation, nodded in agreement. They walked together to a nearby cafe, an odd pair that drew curious glances from passers-by. The cafe was a small, bustling place with a few outdoor tables. Ryan chose one of these, preferring the open air to the cramped interior. As they settled into their seats, an awkward silence fell between them. Ryan, usually confident in business settings, found himself at a loss for words. Mia, accustomed to being ignored by most people, seemed equally unsure of how to proceed. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. "I'm Ryan," he said, extending his hand across the table. Mia hesitated for a moment before shaking it. "Mia," she replied, her voice softer than before. The waiter arrived, and Ryan ordered 2 coffees. As they waited, Ryan's eyes kept drifting to the photograph on the table between them. "I can't believe you found this," he said. "I haven't seen my sister in, well, it's been a long time." Mia nodded, her eyes showing a flicker of understanding. "Life has a way of separating people," she said. There was a weight to her words that hinted at her own experiences. As their coffees arrived, Ryan found himself opening up about his life. He talked about his rise in the business world, the long hours, the constant pressure. "I'm successful by most standards," he admitted. "But lately, I've been feeling empty." Mia listened intently, her eyes never leaving Ryan's face. When he finished, she took a sip of her coffee before speaking. "Success isn't always what it's cracked up to be, is it?" she said. "Sometimes the higher you climb, the lonelier it gets." Ryan was taken aback by her insight. "Exactly," he said, surprised to find such understanding from someone whose life seemed so different from his own. Encouraged by Ryan's openness, Mia began to share her own story. She spoke of the daily struggles of life on the streets, the constant search for food and shelter, the dangers she faced, the judgment from others. "But the hardest part," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "is feeling invisible. People look right through you, like you don't exist." Ryan felt a pang of guilt, knowing he had been one of those people who often walked by without a second glance. "I'm sorry," he said, the words feeling inadequate. Mia shook her head. "Don't be. You're here now, aren't you?" As they continued to talk, Ryan was surprised to find himself relaxing. The pressure of his impending meeting faded into the background as he listened to Mia's stories of life on the streets. Her resilience and unique perspective on the world fascinated him. Their conversation took an unexpected turn when Mia mentioned her passion for art. "It's what keeps me going," she said, a spark lighting up her eyes. "I sketch what I see on the streets, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly. It's all there if you look closely enough." Intrigued, Ryan asked to see her work. Mia hesitated for a moment before pulling out a worn sketchbook from her bag. As she flipped through the pages, Ryan was stunned by the raw talent displayed in her drawings. Each sketch captured the essence of street life with a brutal honesty that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. "These are incredible," Ryan said, genuinely impressed. "You have a real gift, Mia." Mia blushed slightly at the compliment. "It's just something I do to pass the time," she said. But Ryan could see how much his words meant to her. As they continued to look through Mia's sketches, Ryan felt a connection growing between them. Despite their vastly different lives, he found in Mia a kindred spirit, someone who understood the complexities of human existence in a way that many of his business associates did not. The morning slipped away as they talked, neither of them noticing the passage of time. It wasn't until Ryan's phone buzzed with a message from his assistant that he realized how long they had been sitting there. Looking at the time, Ryan felt a momentary panic. He had missed his meeting, something that had never happened before in his career. But as he looked at Mia and the photograph of his sister, he realized that for the first time in years, he had experienced something more meaningful than any business deal. As they prepared to part ways, Ryan knew that this encounter was just the beginning. The photograph had opened a door to his past, and Mia's unexpected presence in his life had shown him a new perspective on the present. He felt a mix of excitement and apprehension about what might come next. But one thing was certain: his life would never be the same. As Ryan walked Mia back to her usual spot on the street, an idea began to form in his mind. He had been deeply moved by her artwork and saw in it a raw talent that deserved recognition. "Mia," he said, stopping suddenly, "what would you think about putting on an art exhibition?" Mia looked at him, confusion evident on her face. "An exhibition? Of my sketches?" She laughed, but it was a nervous sound. "Who would want to see that?" Ryan's excitement grew as he explained his vision. "Your art captures a side of the city that most people never see. It's powerful, Mia. I think it could really make an impact." Mia hesitated, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. The idea of putting her work on display made her feel exposed and vulnerable. "I don't know, Ryan. That's a big step." Ryan, sensing her reluctance, softened his approach. "Look, I know it's a lot to consider, but I truly believe in your talent. This could be a chance for you to share your perspective with the world, maybe even create some opportunities for yourself." As they talked, Ryan could see the idea taking root in Mia's mind. Despite her initial hesitation, there was a glimmer of excitement in her eyes. "You really think people would be interested?" she asked, her voice a mixture of hope and doubt. "I'm certain of it," Ryan replied, his confidence unwavering. "Your art has a unique voice. It deserves to be heard." Over the next hour, they sat on a park bench discussing the possibilities. Ryan outlined his plan to rent a small gallery space, handle the marketing, and take care of all the logistics. Mia listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions or concerns. As their conversation progressed, Mia's resistance began to crumble. The prospect of having her work seen and appreciated by others was both terrifying and exhilarating. "Okay," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. "Let's do it." Ryan felt a surge of excitement. This project gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. It was more than just helping Mia. It was about making a difference, about using his resources and connections for something meaningful. Over the next few weeks, Ryan threw himself into organizing the exhibition. He reached out to contacts in the art world, secured a small but well-located gallery space, and began the process of having Mia's sketches professionally framed. Mia, for her part, worked tirelessly on new pieces. Ryan had set her up in a small studio space, providing her with art supplies she had only dreamed of before. Her art flourished with these new resources, growing more refined while still maintaining its raw, honest edge. As they worked together, the bond between Ryan and Mia deepened. He found himself inspired by her dedication and unique perspective on life. She, in turn, was moved by his genuine belief in her talent and his willingness to invest so much in her success. However, as Ryan devoted more time to the exhibition, he began to face challenges in his professional life. His rival Marcus, a cutthroat businessman known for his aggressive tactics, sensed an opportunity in Ryan's divided attention. During a crucial board meeting, Marcus made a pointed comment about Ryan's new hobby. "I hope this little art project isn't distracting you from more important matters, Ryan," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Ryan felt a flash of anger, but kept his composure. "On the contrary, Marcus, I find that broadening one's horizons can lead to fresh perspectives in business as well." Despite his calm response, Ryan left the meeting feeling unsettled. He knew that Marcus wouldn't hesitate to use any perceived weakness against him. The pressure to maintain his position in the company while pursuing this new passion began to weigh heavily on him. As the date of the exhibition drew closer, Ryan found himself caught between two worlds. In one, he was the successful businessman, expected to focus solely on profit margins and market shares. In the other, he was a patron of the arts, working to bring attention to an overlooked artist and her powerful work. The conflict between these two sides of his life came to a head one evening as he was leaving the office. Marcus cornered him in the parking garage, his face a mask of false concern. "Ryan, old friend," Marcus said, his tone anything but friendly. "I couldn't help but notice you seem distracted lately. Is everything all right? The board is starting to ask questions, you know." Ryan stood his ground, meeting Marcus's gaze steadily. "Everything is fine, Marcus. In fact, I'd say things are better than ever. Sometimes, looking beyond the bottom line can lead to unexpected opportunities." As he drove home that night, Ryan's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He knew the exhibition was a risk, both personally and professionally. But as he thought of Mia's art, of the passion and purpose he'd found in this project, he realized it was a risk he was willing to take. The exhibition was more than just a showcase of art. For Ryan, it represented a new direction, a chance to merge his business acumen with a more meaningful pursuit. For Mia, it was an opportunity to be seen, to have her voice heard after years of invisibility. As the opening night of the exhibition approached, both Ryan and Mia felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. They were about to step into uncharted territory, and neither of them knew quite what to expect. The tension in the boardroom was palpable as Ryan concluded his presentation on the company's quarterly performance. He had barely finished speaking when Marcus, his rival, leaned forward with a smirk. "Interesting figures, Ryan," Marcus said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "But I can't help wondering if your attention has been divided lately. I hear you're quite the patron of the arts these days." Ryan felt a surge of anger but kept his composure. "My personal interests don't interfere with my work, Marcus. In fact, they often provide fresh perspectives that benefit the company." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? Well, I'm sure the board will be fascinated to hear how your little street art project is boosting our bottom line." The other board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging glances. Ryan could feel their scrutiny, their unspoken questions about his commitment to the company. As the meeting adjourned, Ryan felt a growing pressure in his chest. He had always prided himself on his focus and dedication to his career. Now, for the first time, he found himself questioning the cost of that single-minded pursuit. Later that evening, Ryan met Mia at the small studio he had rented for her. She was putting the finishing touches on a new piece, her face a mask of concentration. As he watched her work, Ryan felt a sense of purpose that had been missing from his life for years. "How's it coming along?" he asked, breaking the silence. Mia looked up, a small smile on her face. "It's getting there. But Ryan, can I ask you something?" Ryan nodded, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "Why are you doing all this? I mean, you hardly know me. You have this successful career, and now you're risking it all for... what? Some homeless woman's sketches?" The question caught Ryan off guard. He paused, considering his response carefully. "I guess I saw something in your art that resonated with me. It reminded me of a part of myself I'd forgotten." Mia put down her pencil, her gaze intense. "But what about your family? Your sister? Shouldn't finding her be more important than this exhibition?" Ryan felt a pang of guilt. In the excitement of planning the exhibition, he had pushed thoughts of his sister to the back of his mind. "It's complicated, Mia. My family, There's a lot of history there. But it's your family, Ryan, Mia pressed. You can't just leave that in the past. Trust me, I know what it's like to lose people. You should grab onto any chance you have to reconnect. Her words struck a chord in Ryan. Memories of his childhood, of the sister he'd lost, came flooding back. The pain he'd buried for so long resurfaced, raw and intense. You don't understand, Ryan said, his voice tight. It's not that simple. My father, he's the reason we were separated. I can't just forgive and forget. Mia's expression softened. I'm not saying you should forgive, but don't you think you owe it to yourself to at least try and find out what happened? Ryan turned away, unable to meet her gaze. The truth in her words was uncomfortable, forcing him to confront emotions he'd long suppressed. As he left the studio that night, Ryan's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. The pressure from work, the upcoming exhibition, and now the resurfacing of his family issues. It all felt overwhelming. Driving home, Ryan found himself taking a detour, ending up in the neighborhood where he grew up. As he parked outside his childhood home, now occupied by strangers, the memories came flooding back. He remembered the laughter, the arguments, the day his sister disappeared. The pain of that loss had shaped his entire life, driving him to succeed, but also keeping him emotionally distant from others. Sitting in his car, staring at the house, Ryan realized that Mia was right. He couldn't keep running from his past. The exhibition wasn't just about showcasing Mia's art. It was about facing his own demons. As dawn broke, Ryan made a decision. He would continue with the exhibition, but he would also start searching for his sister. It was time to confront the ghosts of his past, no matter how painful it might be. Driving back to his apartment, Ryan felt a mix of determination and fear. He knew the coming weeks would be challenging, balancing his work responsibilities, the exhibition preparations, and now the search for his sister. But for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. The conflicts he faced, at work, with Mia, and within himself, were pushing him to grow, to become more than just a successful businessman. As he walked into his apartment, exhausted but resolute, Ryan knew that whatever happened next would change his life forever. The exhibition was no longer just about Mia's art. It had become a catalyst for his own journey of self-discovery and healing. The gallery space buzzed with activity as Ryan and Mia worked on hanging her artwork for the upcoming exhibition. As they carefully positioned a particularly striking piece, Mia paused, her eyes distant. You know, she said softly, I never told you why I started drawing. Ryan stopped what he was doing, sensing the importance of the moment. I'm listening, he said gently. Mia took a deep breath. I had a pretty rough childhood. My parents, well, they weren't exactly the caring type. Art became my escape. I'd draw these fantastical worlds where everything was better, where I was safe and loved. As she spoke, Ryan saw a vulnerability in Mia he hadn't noticed before. Her usual tough exterior had cracked, revealing the pain she carried. As I got older, the streets became my home, Mia continued. But I never stopped drawing. It was the one thing that kept me sane, you know? Capturing the world around me, the good and the bad. It helped me make sense of things. Ryan felt a lump form in his throat. He had known Mia had a difficult past, but hearing the details made it all too real. I'm sorry you had to go through that, he said, the words feeling inadequate. Mia shrugged, a small smile on her face. Don't be. It made me who I am, he said, and it gave me this. She gestured to the artwork around them. Without all that, I might never have discovered my passion. Her resilience moved Ryan deeply. He found himself sharing more about his own past, about the sister he'd lost and the family that had fallen apart. As they talked, Ryan realized how much they had in common despite their different backgrounds. Later that evening, after Mia had left, Ryan sat alone in his office. The conversation with Mia had stirred up memories and emotions he'd long suppressed. With a sense of determination, he picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Hello, this is Ryan Thompson. I'd like to hire your services to find someone," he said to the private detective on the other end of the line. As he provided the details about his sister, Ryan felt a mix of anxiety and hope. What would he discover? Was he ready for the truth? Over the next few days, Ryan threw himself into both the exhibition preparations and his work, trying to keep his mind off the ongoing investigation. But the anticipation gnawed at him constantly. Meanwhile, the pressure at work continued to mount. Marcus had stepped up his efforts to undermine Ryan, spreading rumors about his divided loyalties among the board members. Ryan found himself working late into the night, trying to prove his commitment to the company while still making time for the exhibition. It was during one of these late nights at the office that Ryan received the call he'd been both dreading and hoping for. The detective's voice was neutral as he delivered the news. "Mr. Thompson, we found a lead on your sister's whereabouts." Ryan's heart raced as he listened to the details. His sister was alive, living in a small town just outside the city. The detective had managed to track her down through old social services records. As the reality of the situation sank in, Ryan felt overwhelmed. After all these years, he finally had the chance to reconnect with his sister. But what would he say? How would she react? The possibilities were both exhilarating and terrifying. Lost in thought, Ryan didn't notice Marcus enter his office until it was too late. His rival's eyes narrowed as he took in Ryan's distracted state. "Trouble in paradise, Ryan?" Marcus asked, his tone mockingly concerned. "You seem rather preoccupied lately. The board is starting to wonder if you're really up for the challenges ahead." Ryan straightened in his chair, meeting Marcus's gaze steadily. "My personal life doesn't affect my work, Marcus. If anything, it's given me a new perspective that will benefit the company." Marcus smirked. "We'll see about that. Just remember, in our world, there's no room for distractions. Family, art, they're luxuries we can't afford if we want to stay on top." As Marcus left, his words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the cutthroat world Ryan had been part of for so long. But now, with the prospect of reuniting with his sister and the upcoming exhibition, Ryan found himself questioning whether that world was truly where he belonged. That night, as Ryan drove home, his mind raced with possibilities. He knew he was standing at a crossroads. The safe path would be to focus on his career, to prove Marcus wrong and secure his position in the company. But the other path, the one that led to his sister and to a life where art and human connections mattered, called to him strongly. As he parked his car, Ryan made a decision. He would pursue both paths, at least for now. He would find a way to balance his work responsibilities with his search for his sister and his commitment to Mia's exhibition. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, Ryan felt truly alive. The revelations of the past few days had shaken the foundations of his carefully constructed life. But as he looked up at the night sky, Ryan felt a sense of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them head-on. The night of the exhibition arrived, bringing with it a mix of excitement and nervous energy. Ryan stood at the entrance of the small gallery, watching as the first guests began to arrive. He adjusted his tie, feeling oddly out of place in his business suit among the eclectic crowd of art enthusiasts. Mia appeared beside him, looking almost unrecognizable in a simple black dress. Her usual confidence seemed shaken, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "There are so many people," she whispered, her voice tight with anxiety. Ryan gave her a reassuring smile. "They're here to see your work, Mia. You should be proud." As more guests filtered in, the gallery began to buzz with conversation. Ryan could hear snippets of discussion about the artwork, words like raw, powerful, and authentic drifting through the air. He felt a surge of pride for Mia and her talent. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the chatter. Well, if it isn't the businessman turned art patron." Ryan turned to see Marcus sauntering towards them, a glass of champagne in hand. His presence was unexpected and unwelcome. "Marcus," Ryan greeted coolly. "I didn't expect to see you here." Marcus smirked. "Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world. I had to see what was so important that it's been distracting our star executive." Before Ryan could respond, Mia stepped forward. "I'm Mia," she said, her voice steady despite her earlier nervousness. "I'm the artist. Would you like a tour of the exhibition?" Marcus looked taken aback for a moment before recovering his composure. "Lead the way," he said, curiosity evident in his tone. As Mia led Marcus through the gallery, explaining her work with growing confidence, Ryan felt a swell of admiration for her resilience. He mingled with the other guests, answering questions about the exhibition and Mia's background. The night was going well, better than Ryan had dared to hope. Critics were praising Mia's unique perspective, and several pieces had already sold. Ryan was deep in conversation with a gallery owner interested in featuring Mia's work when his phone buzzed in his pocket. Excusing himself, he stepped outside to take the call. It was the detective he had hired to find his sister. "Mr. Thompson," the detective's voice was urgent. "I've got a solid lead on your sister's location. She's been staying at a shelter just outside the city. If you want to meet her, now's your chance." Ryan's heart raced. After all these years, his sister was within reach. But the exhibition was in full swing, and Mia needed his support. As he grappled with this dilemma, Ryan spotted Mia through the gallery window. She was animatedly discussing her work with a group of interested buyers, her earlier nervousness completely gone. In that moment, he realized she no longer needed him there. Making a quick decision, Ryan re-entered the gallery and made his way to Mia. He pulled her aside, explaining the situation in hushed tones. Mia's eyes widened. "Go," she said without hesitation. "This is your chance to reconnect with your sister. I've got things handled here." Grateful for her understanding, Ryan squeezed her hand in thanks before rushing out of the gallery. As he drove to the address the detective had given him, his mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Excitement, fear, hope, and anxiety all battled for dominance. Arriving at the shelter, Ryan took a deep breath to steady himself before entering. The receptionist directed him to a common area, and as he rounded the corner, he saw her. His sister, Sarah, sat in a worn armchair, her face lined with years of hardship, but still recognizably the girl from his childhood. As their eyes met, time seemed to stand still. "Ryan?" Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper, a mix of disbelief and hope in her eyes. "Sarah," Ryan replied, his own voice choked with emotion. "I've been looking for you for so long." As they embraced, years of separation and pain melting away in an instant, Ryan felt a sense of completeness he hadn't experienced in decades. The exhibition, his career worries, even Marcus's threats, all of it faded into the background as he reconnected with his long-lost sister. Back at the gallery, the exhibition was coming to a close. Mia, buoyed by the success of the night, fielded questions and accepted congratulations with grace. As the last guests departed, she found herself alone in the gallery, surrounded by her artwork and the echoes of the evening's triumph. Looking around at the pieces that had once been private sketches, now proudly displayed and appreciated, Mia felt a profound sense of transformation. This exhibition, born from a chance encounter with Ryan, had changed everything. As she began to tidy up, she wondered about Ryan and his sister, hoping that his night had been as transformative as hers. The day after the exhibition, Ryan and Mia met at a small cafe to debrief. The bustling atmosphere provided a stark contrast to the emotional intensity of the previous night. "So," Mia began, stirring her coffee, "how did it go with your sister?" Ryan took a deep breath, collecting his thoughts. "It was overwhelming. Sarah's been through a lot. She told me about her struggles with addiction, homelessness. It wasn't easy to hear." Mia nodded, understanding in her eyes. "But you found her. That's what matters now, right?" "Yeah," Ryan agreed, a small smile forming. "We talked for hours. There's so much to catch up on, so much to process, but it feels like a new beginning." As they discussed the exhibition's success and Ryan's reunion with Sarah, a group of Ryan's colleagues entered the cafe. They spotted Ryan and approached, curiosity evident on their faces. "Ryan, we heard about your art show last night," one of them said. "Quite a departure from your usual scene, isn't it?" Ryan felt a moment of tension, aware of how his recent actions might be perceived in the corporate world. But looking at Mia, he made a decision. "It was incredible," he said firmly. "Let me tell you about the artist." Over the next hour, Ryan shared Mia's story with his colleagues, explaining how her art captured a side of the city often overlooked. To his surprise, his colleagues seemed genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions and expressing admiration for Mia's talent. As the conversation wound down, Ryan's phone buzzed. It was a message from the detective he'd hired, requesting an urgent meeting. Excusing himself, Ryan stepped outside to take the call. The detective's voice was grave. "Mr. Thompson, I've uncovered some information about your family that you need to know. It's complicated." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of information?" "It's about the circumstances of your separation from your sister," the detective replied. "And it involves your father. I think it's best if we discuss this in person." Agreeing to meet later that day, Ryan ended the call, his mind racing. What could the detective have discovered? And how would it affect his newfound connection with Sarah? Returning to the cafe, Ryan found Mia alone, his colleagues having left. She noticed his troubled expression immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Ryan hesitated, then decided to confide in her. He explained about the detective's call and the potential revelations about his family's past. Mia listened intently, her brow furrowed in thought. "Ryan," she said finally, "whatever you find out, remember that it doesn't change who you are now. Your past doesn't define you." Her words resonated with Ryan, reminding him of how far they'd both come since their chance encounter on the street. Later that afternoon, Ryan met with the detective at a discreet office. The information he received shook him to his core. His father, it turned out, had been involved in illegal activities that led to the family's separation. The decision to split up Ryan and Sarah had been made to protect them from potential repercussions. As Ryan left the office, his world felt upended once again. The narrative he'd constructed about his past, the resentment he'd harbored towards his father, all of it needed to be reevaluated in light of this new information. Driving aimlessly through the city, Ryan found himself at the shelter where he'd reunited with Sarah. Making a spontaneous decision, he went inside. Sarah was surprised to see him, but her face lit up with a smile. As they sat together in the shelter's common area, Ryan shared what he'd learned about their father. Sarah listened silently, tears forming in her eyes. When Ryan finished, she reached out and took his hand. "I always hoped there was a reason," she said softly, "that he didn't just abandon us." Their conversation lasted for hours, delving into memories both painful and precious. As they talked, Ryan felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. The truth, complex as it was, offered a chance for understanding and perhaps even forgiveness. As evening fell, Ryan realized he had missed several calls from work. The old Ryan would have panicked, rushing back to the office to smooth things over. But now, sitting with his sister, he found he didn't care about the missed calls. His priorities had shifted. Leaving the shelter, Ryan felt a mix of emotions: sadness for the years lost, hope for the future, and a new determination to balance his rediscovered family connections with his career and his commitment to Mia's art. As he drove home, Ryan reflected on how much his life had changed in such a short time. The exhibition, his reunion with Sarah, the revelations about his father, all of it had transformed his perspective. He realized that the connections he'd made, both with Mia and with his long-lost sister, were far more valuable than any corporate success. With this new understanding, Ryan felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, both in his personal life and in the business world. The family connection he'd rediscovered had given him a new strength and purpose. The following morning, Ryan woke up with a sense of purpose. He had made a decision. He would bring Mia along to meet Sarah. It felt right to connect these two important parts of his life. Ryan called Mia and explained his idea. After a moment of hesitation, she agreed. "Are you sure about this, Ryan?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. "I am," Ryan replied firmly. "You've both been instrumental in changing my life. It feels important to bring you together." They arranged to meet at a small park near the shelter where Sarah was staying. As Ryan drove there with Mia, he could sense her nervousness. "What if she doesn't like me?" Mia asked quietly, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. Ryan glanced at her, surprised by her uncharacteristic insecurity. "She'll love you, Mia. Just be yourself." As they arrived at the park, Ryan spotted Sarah sitting on a bench, her posture tense. He took a deep breath, then led Mia over to her. "Sarah," he said, his voice warm. "This is Mia, the artist I told you about." Sarah stood up, her eyes moving between Ryan and Mia. There was a moment of awkward silence before Sarah stepped forward, offering a small smile. "It's nice to meet you, Mia. Ryan's told me about your art." Mia relaxed slightly, returning the smile. "It's great to meet you too. I hope Ryan hasn't exaggerated too much about my work." As they settled on the bench, the conversation started slowly, but gradually picked up pace. Sarah asked about the exhibition, and Mia described some of her favorite pieces. Ryan watched, feeling a warmth spread through his chest as he saw these two important people in his life connecting. The discussion soon turned to more personal matters. Sarah opened up about her struggles over the years, and Mia shared some of her own experiences living on the streets. Ryan listened, struck by the similarities in their stories, despite their different backgrounds. As they talked, a text message buzzed on Ryan's phone. It was from Marcus. "Board meeting in an hour. Your presence is required. Don't let your extracurricular activities interfere with your responsibilities." Ryan felt a flash of anger at Marcus's thinly veiled threat, but he pushed it aside. This moment, here with Sarah and Mia, was more important. As the afternoon wore on, the initial awkwardness had completely dissipated. Sarah and Mia were talking animatedly about art therapy programs for homeless shelters, with Mia offering to volunteer her time. Ryan, listening to their plans, felt a sudden clarity. The corporate world he had been so focused on for years seemed less important now. The connections he was fostering, the real impact he could have on people's lives, this felt like his true calling. As the sun began to set, they reluctantly prepared to part ways. Sarah hugged Mia, thanking her for her offer to help at the shelter. Then she turned to Ryan, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not giving up on me, for bringing Mia into my life too. I feel like I'm part of something again." Ryan pulled her into a tight embrace, his own emotions threatening to overflow. "We're family," he said simply. "We stick together now." As they walked back to the car, Mia nudged Ryan gently. "You missed your board meeting," she said, having noticed his earlier text. Ryan shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. Some things are more important. On the drive back, Ryan's mind was racing with ideas. He thought about Sarah's situation, about the other people at the shelter, about Mia's art and its power to bring awareness to overlooked issues. A plan was forming in his mind, one that could potentially bridge his business acumen with his newfound desire to make a real difference. "Mia," he said suddenly, "what would you think about starting an art program at Sarah's shelter? Something that could help people express themselves, maybe even sell their work." Mia's eyes lit up. "That sounds amazing, Ryan, but how would we fund it?" Ryan smiled, his decision solidifying. "Leave that to me. I think it's time I used my business skills for something more meaningful than just making money." As they continued to discuss the possibilities, Ryan felt a sense of excitement he hadn't experienced in years. He knew there would be challenges ahead, explaining his new priorities to the board, potentially facing off against Marcus, balancing his old life with his new goals. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the right path. The meeting in the park had done more than just bring Sarah and Mia together. It had crystallized Ryan's new purpose, showing him a way to unite all the parts of his life into something truly meaningful. As they drove into the city, the lights twinkling in the darkness, Ryan felt ready to face whatever came next. The next morning, Ryan arrived at his office earlier than usual. He had a lot to think about and wanted some quiet time before the day's meetings began. As he settled at his desk, there was a knock at the door. To his surprise, it was Sarah. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" Ryan asked, concern evident in his voice. Sarah looked nervous but determined. "Ryan, there's something I need to tell you. About Dad. About why we were really separated." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. He gestured for Sarah to sit down and close the office door. "What is it, Sarah? What do you know?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Yesterday, after we met with Mia, I did some digging. I reached out to an old family friend, someone who knew what was going on back then. The truth is, Dad wasn't just in debt. He was involved in something much bigger, much more dangerous." Ryan listened intently as Sarah revealed the truth about their father's past. Their dad had been involved in a complex financial fraud scheme, one that had attracted the attention of some very dangerous people. The decision to separate Ryan and Sarah hadn't just been about protecting them from the fallout of their father's debts. It was about keeping them safe from potential retaliation. "But why didn't anyone tell us?" Ryan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "They thought it was safer if we didn't know," Sarah explained. "If we couldn't accidentally reveal anything. Dad, he thought he was protecting us." As Ryan processed this information, another knock came at the door. It was Marcus, looking smug. "Ryan, I hope I'm not interrupting a family reunion," Marcus said, his eyes darting between Ryan and Sarah. "But the board is waiting. It's time to discuss your recent activities." Ryan stood up, feeling a mix of emotions, shock from Sarah's revelations, anger at Marcus's intrusion, and a growing determination to take control of the situation. "Actually, Marcus, I'm glad you're here," Ryan said, his voice steady. "There's something I need to discuss with the board, and I think you should be part of it." Marcus looked taken aback, but quickly regained his composure. "By all means, lead the way." As they walked to the boardroom, Ryan's mind raced. The truth about his father, the art program he wanted to start with Mia, his shifting priorities, it all swirled together in his head. He realized that this was the moment to lay everything on the table. Entering the boardroom, Ryan saw the expectant faces of the board members. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "I know there have been questions about my recent activities," he started, "and I owe you all an explanation. But first, I want to tell you about a vision I have for this company, one that combines our business expertise with social responsibility." Over the next hour, Ryan laid out his plan. He explained his idea for an art program that would not only help people in shelters, but could also be a unique corporate social responsibility initiative for the company. He talked about the potential for positive press, for attracting socially conscious investors, and for making a real difference in the community. As he spoke, Ryan could see the board members' expressions changing from skepticism to interest. Even Marcus, who had started the meeting looking triumphant, now appeared thoughtful. When Ryan finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, to everyone's surprise, it was Marcus who spoke first. "Ryan," he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious, "I came here today planning to challenge your commitment to this company. But what you've presented, it's not just good for the community, it's good business. I have to admit, I'm impressed." The other board members nodded in agreement. Questions flew fast about budgets, implementation, potential partnerships. Ryan answered them all, feeling a growing sense of excitement. As the meeting concluded, Ryan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had faced his past, embraced his new priorities, and found a way to bring it all together in a way that could benefit everyone. Outside the boardroom, Sarah was waiting. "How did it go?" she asked anxiously. Ryan smiled, feeling more at peace than he had in years. "It went well, really well. I think we're on the verge of something big here, Sarah, something that can help a lot of people." As they walked out of the office together, Ryan felt a profound sense of gratitude. The secrets of the past, painful as they were, had led him to this moment. A moment of clarity, of purpose, and of hope for the future. He pulled out his phone to call Mia. It was time to start putting their plans into action. As he dialed, Ryan realized that the revelation of secrets hadn't torn his world apart. Instead, it had opened up new possibilities, connecting all the disparate parts of his life into something meaningful and whole. A week after the board meeting, Ryan was deep in preparations for launching the new art program. He had just finished a call with Mia about potential locations when his assistant buzzed him. "Mr. Thompson, there's someone here to see you. He says it's urgent and personal." Curious, Ryan agreed to the meeting. As the office door opened, he froze. Standing before him was a man he hadn't seen in years, Marcus's father, Richard Blackwell. "Hello, Ryan," Richard said, his voice gravelly with age. "It's been a long time." Ryan gestured for Richard to sit, his mind racing. "Mr. Blackwell, this is unexpected. What brings you here?" Richard's eyes, so similar to Marcus's, held a weight of unspoken words. "I've been following your recent activities. The art exhibition, your reunion with Sarah, and now this new initiative of yours. It stirred up some old ghosts, Ryan." A chill ran down Ryan's spine. "What do you mean?" "Your father and I, we weren't just business rivals. We were partners once, in things we're not proud of." Richard paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "The truth is, the scheme your father was involved in, I was part of it too." Ryan felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. "You... what?" Richard nodded solemnly. "It's why Marcus has been so aggressive towards you. He doesn't know the full story, but he sensed there was bad blood between our families. I've come to make things right." Over the next hour, Richard revealed the full extent of the past's tangled web. The financial fraud scheme had been far-reaching, involving several high-profile business figures. Ryan's father had wanted out, threatening to expose everything. The separation of Ryan and Sarah hadn't just been for their protection, it was leverage to keep their father quiet. "Your new art initiative," Richard continued. It's going to shine a light on areas of the city that some powerful people would rather keep in the shadows. People who were involved in the old scheme and have never been caught. Ryan's mind was reeling. So Marcus's attempts to undermine me were partly my doing, Richard admitted. I was afraid you were getting too close to the truth, but seeing what you're trying to do now, I can't keep this secret any longer. As Richard finished his confession, there was a commotion outside. The office door burst open, revealing a furious Marcus. "Father, what are you doing here?" Marcus demanded, his eyes darting between Richard and Ryan. Ryan stood, feeling a strange calm descend over him. "Marcus, I think you need to hear this too. It's time we all face the truth." Over the next few hours, the full story unfolded. Marcus, initially disbelieving and angry, gradually fell silent as he absorbed the magnitude of the revelations. The rivalry between Ryan and Marcus, it turned out, had been built on a foundation of lies and hidden guilt. As the day wore on, decisions had to be made. Richard, weighed down by years of secrecy, decided to turn himself in to the authorities. Marcus, shaken to his core, offered his resignation from the company. Ryan, however, had a different idea. "Marcus," he said, "I think there's a way we can make this right, not just for us, but for the community that's suffered because of these old secrets." He outlined a plan, one that would use their combined business acumen and resources to not only support the art program, but to create a comprehensive initiative for community renewal. It would involve coming clean about the past, making restitutions, and dedicating their efforts to rebuilding what their father's actions had torn down. Marcus listened, his usual bravado replaced by a thoughtful silence. Finally, he nodded. "It won't be easy," he said, "but I'm in." As the day drew to a close, Ryan found himself standing by the window of his office, looking out over the city. The truth had been more complex and far-reaching than he could have imagined. But instead of destroying everything, it had opened up a path to genuine redemption and positive change. He thought of Mia, of Sarah, of the people in the shelters who would benefit from their new initiative. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, he felt like he was truly making a difference. Ryan picked up his phone to call Mia and Sarah. It was time to share the full story with them and to start this new chapter together. As he dialed, he realized that this final twist hadn't just changed his understanding of the past, it had transformed his vision for the future. The secrets had been revealed, the old rivalries dissolved. Now, the real work could begin, the work of healing, rebuilding, and creating something truly meaningful out of the ashes of the past. Emma's fingers gripped the handle of the mop tightly as she pushed it across the polished floor of the executive office. The scent of lemon-scented cleaner filled the air, masking the lingering aroma of expensive cologne and freshly brewed coffee. Her eyes darted to the large windows, offering a breathtaking view of the New York skyline. It was a view she cleaned every day but could never truly enjoy. As she worked, Emma's mind wandered to her daughter, Mia. The image of her little girl's hopeful face when she asked for new shoes last week made Emma's heart ache. She had to say no again. The meager salary she earned as a cleaner barely covered their basic needs. Emma glanced at the designer shoes tucked neatly under the mahogany desk she was cleaning. One pair probably cost more than she made in a month. The contrast between her life and the lives of those who worked in this building was stark. While she struggled to put food on the table, they dined at five-star restaurants. While she worried about paying rent for their tiny apartment, they lived in penthouses and brownstones. The injustice of it all sometimes threatened to overwhelm her. But Emma pushed those thoughts aside. She had a job to do, and she was grateful for it, no matter how unfair the world seemed. As Emma moved to empty the trash can, she heard voices approaching. Quickly, she stepped behind a large potted plant, not wanting to disturb whoever was coming. Two men in expensive suits entered the office, their voices low and urgent. Emma knew she should leave, but something in their tone made her pause. "We need to move fast," one man said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If word gets out about this plan, the whole company could go under." The other man nodded, his face grim. "I know, but if we pull this off, we'll be set for life. The old man won't know what hit him until it's too late." Emma's heart raced. She didn't understand all the details, but she knew enough to realize these men were planning something that could harm the company. As they continued to speak in hushed tones, she strained to hear more, her conscience battling with her instinct for self-preservation. The men's conversation abruptly ended as a phone rang. They left the office quickly, leaving Emma alone with the weight of what she had just overheard. She resumed her cleaning, her mind whirling with possibilities and fears. As her shift ended and Emma prepared to leave the building, she found herself hesitating by the elevator. The conversation she had overheard played on repeat in her mind. She knew she should mind her own business. After all, she was just a cleaner, and getting involved in corporate affairs could jeopardize her job, a risk she couldn't afford to take. But as she thought about the potential consequences of staying silent, Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. If these men were planning something illegal, it could affect everyone in the company, including the other cleaners and security staff, people like her who couldn't afford to lose their jobs if the company went under. Emma's hand hovered over the elevator button. She had always taught Mia to do the right thing, no matter how difficult it might be. What kind of example would she be setting if she walked away now? With a deep breath, Emma made her decision. She turned away from the elevator and walked towards the reception desk. Her heart pounded as she approached the receptionist, a young woman who had always been kind to the cleaning staff. "Excuse me," Emma said, her voice shaky. "I need to speak with someone important. I overheard something, and I think it might be serious." The receptionist looked at her with surprise but nodded, picking up the phone. As Emma waited, she silently prayed she was doing the right thing. She didn't know what consequences her decision might bring, but she knew she couldn't live with herself if she stayed silent. Little did Emma know that this moment of courage would set in motion a chain of events that would change her life forever, entangling her in a web of corporate intrigue, danger, and unexpected connections. As she stood there, waiting to be heard, the New York skyline twinkled behind her, indifferent to the small yet significant act of bravery unfolding in its shadow. Emma's palms were sweaty as she stepped into the opulent office of Alex Carter. The room exuded power and wealth, with its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Alex sat behind a massive desk, his attention focused on a stack of documents. He looked up as Emma entered, surprise evident on his face. "Can I help you?" Alex asked, his tone businesslike but not unkind. Emma took a deep breath. "Mr. Carter, my name is Emma. I'm part of the cleaning staff, and I overheard something that I think you should know about." Alex's eyebrows raised slightly, but he gestured for her to continue. Emma recounted what she had heard, her voice growing steadier as she spoke. She described the hushed conversation, the mentions of a plan that could destabilize the company, and the urgency in the men's voices. As she finished, Alex leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Emma. It took courage to come forward." Emma nodded, relief washing over her. "I couldn't just ignore it. It didn't seem right." Alex stood up and walked around his desk. "You did the right thing. I'll look into this matter personally. Can you describe the men you overheard?" Emma provided as much detail as she could remember about their appearance and voices. Alex listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. "I appreciate your honesty and integrity, Emma. Not many people would have done what you did. I promise you, your job is safe, and this conversation will remain confidential." Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. As she turned to leave, Alex spoke again. "One more thing, Emma. What's your daughter's name?" Surprised, Emma replied, "Mia. Her name is Mia." Alex smiled. "Well, tell Mia her mother is a very brave woman." The next morning, Emma woke up early as usual to prepare Mia for school. As she stepped out of their apartment building, she stopped dead in her tracks. Parked in front of the building was a gleaming red Ferrari, looking completely out of place in their modest neighborhood. A man in a suit approached her, holding out a set of keys. "Ms. Emma, this is for you, courtesy of Mr. Alex Carter." Emma's mind reeled. She took the keys automatically, staring at the luxurious car in disbelief. A small envelope was attached to the keyring. With shaking hands, she opened it to find a note. "Emma, a small token of appreciation for your integrity. Your actions may have saved the company. Alex Carter." As the suited man walked away, Emma stood frozen, the keys heavy in her hand. The Ferrari gleamed in the morning sun, drawing curious glances from passers-by. Emma felt a mix of emotions wash over her: gratitude, disbelief, and an unexpected feeling of guilt. She thought about her neighbors, many of whom were struggling just like her. What would they think? How could she explain this sudden windfall? And more importantly, was it right to accept such an extravagant gift for simply doing what she believed was right? Emma's practical side also kicked in. The insurance, the maintenance, the fuel, all of it would cost more than she could afford. And what about parking? Their neighborhood wasn't exactly equipped for luxury sports cars. As these thoughts swirled in her mind, Mia emerged from the building, her eyes widening at the sight of the Ferrari. "Wow, Mom, is that ours?" Emma hesitated, unsure how to respond. She didn't want to lie to her daughter, but she also didn't want to explain the complicated situation that led to this gift. "It's complicated, sweetie. Let's get you to school, okay?" As they walked past the Ferrari, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that by accepting this gift, she had somehow crossed a line. The world she had merely observed from afar while cleaning was now reaching out to pull her in. It was both thrilling and terrifying. Throughout the day, as Emma went about her cleaning duties, her mind kept drifting back to the Ferrari parked outside her apartment. She felt exposed, as if her actions had put a spotlight on her that she wasn't sure she wanted. The quiet anonymity that had been her shield was slowly being stripped away. She realized that by speaking up, she had set something in motion that was bigger than she had anticipated. The lines between her world and the world of the wealthy executives she cleaned for were blurring, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for what that might mean. As her shift ended, Emma made a decision. She would thank Mr. Carter for his generosity, but politely decline the gift. It was too much, too soon, and came with complications she wasn't prepared to handle. She only hoped that her refusal wouldn't be seen as ingratitude or impact the trust she had begun to build with Alex Carter. Emma's senses were on high alert as she moved through the office building the following days. She felt eyes on her constantly, though when she turned to look, no one seemed to be paying her any particular attention. Still, the prickle at the back of her neck persisted, making her jumpy and anxious. At home, Emma tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for Mia's sake. She helped with homework, cooked dinner, and listened to Mia's stories about school, all while pushing down the growing unease in her stomach. But Mia, perceptive as always, noticed the change in her mother. "Mom, are you okay?" Mia asked one evening as Emma absently stirred a pot of pasta, her mind elsewhere. Emma forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart, just a bit tired from work." Mia didn't look convinced, but she didn't press further. Emma felt a pang of guilt for not being fully present for her daughter, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next day, as Emma was finishing up her shift, her cell phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. A distorted voice responded, sending chills down her spine. "You should have kept your mouth shut, Emma. Mind your own business, or things might get unpleasant for you and your little girl." The line went dead before Emma could respond. Her hands shook as she lowered the phone, fear gripping her heart. They knew about Mia. The threat was clear, and suddenly, the danger felt very real. Emma's first instinct was to run, to grab Mia and disappear. But where would they go? How would they survive? And would running really solve anything, or just delay the inevitable? As the panic threatened to overwhelm her, Emma took a deep breath, forcing herself to think rationally. She had started this by speaking up, and now she had a responsibility to see it through. Running would only put Mia in more danger in the long run. With renewed determination, Emma made her way to Alex Carter's office. She needed to tell him about the threat, to make him understand the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about corporate intrigue anymore. It was about her family's safety. Alex's assistant tried to turn her away, insisting that Mr. Carter was in meetings all afternoon. But Emma stood her ground, refusing to leave until she spoke with him. Her persistence paid off when Alex emerged from his office, looking surprised to see her there. "Emma, is everything all right?" he asked, noting her agitated state. "I need to speak with you, Mr. Carter. It's urgent," Emma replied, her voice low but firm. Alex nodded, ushering her into his office and closing the door behind them. Once inside, Emma recounted the threatening phone call, her words tumbling out in a rush. Alex's face grew serious as he listened. When Emma finished, he leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I should have anticipated this might happen. But I want you to know, we're in this together now. I won't let anything happen to you or Mia." Emma felt a mixture of relief and apprehension at his words. "What do we do now?" she asked. "First, we need to ensure your safety," Alex replied. "I'll arrange for security for you and Mia, and we need to accelerate our investigation into this corruption. The sooner we expose these people, the sooner you'll be out of danger." As Alex spoke, laying out plans for protection and further investigation, Emma felt a shift in their relationship. They were no longer just an employer and employee, or even a billionaire and a cleaner. They were allies in a fight against corruption, bound together by circumstance and a shared determination to uncover the truth. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," Emma said, as their meeting concluded. "I know I've put you in a difficult position by coming to you with this." Alex shook his head. "You did the right thing, Emma, both in alerting me initially and in coming to me now. We're in this together, and I promise you, we will see it through." As Emma left Alex's office, she felt a mix of emotions. Fear still lingered, but it was tempered now by a sense of resolve. She had taken a stand, and despite the threats, she wasn't backing down. Whatever came next, she would face it head-on, for herself and for Mia. Walking home that evening, Emma felt the weight of her decision. She had crossed a line, stepping into a world of corporate intrigue and danger that she never imagined would be part of her life. But as she thought of Mia, of the future she wanted for her daughter, Emma knew she had made the right choice. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and dangers she couldn't yet imagine. But Emma was no longer alone in this fight. With Alex Carter as an ally, she had a chance to make a real difference, to expose the corruption that threatened not just a company, but the livelihoods of countless employees like herself. As she reached her apartment, Emma took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. The game had changed, and so had she. No longer just a cleaner trying to make ends meet, Emma was now a key player in a high-stakes battle against corporate corruption, and she was ready to fight. Emma and Alex wasted no time in launching their investigation. They met in secret, often late at night in Alex's office or in discreet cafes around the city. Emma's knowledge of the building's layout and cleaning schedules proved invaluable, allowing them access to offices and documents that would otherwise be off limits. One night, as they pored over financial reports and email records, Alex let out a low whistle. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a series of transactions. "These numbers don't add up. It looks like someone's been siphoning off funds and disguising it as operational costs." Emma leaned in, her brow furrowed. She might not understand all the financial jargon, but she could see the discrepancies. Who has access to make these kinds of transactions? "That's the thing," Alex replied, running a hand through his hair. "It would have to be someone high up, very high up." As they dug deeper, they uncovered a web of deceit that went far beyond what Emma had initially overheard. False companies, inflated contracts, kickbacks. The corruption ran deep and involved several top executives. "This is bigger than we thought," Alex said one evening, his voice tired. "We're not just dealing with a few bad apples. This is systemic." Emma nodded, feeling the weight of their discovery. "What do we do now?" "We keep digging," Alex replied. "We need irrefutable evidence if we're going to expose this." As they worked together night after night, Emma began to see a different side of Alex. Behind the billionaire facade was a man deeply committed to doing the right thing, even at great personal cost. He spoke of his late father, who had built the company from the ground up, and his determination to honor that legacy. "You know, Emma," Alex said one night as they took a break, "I've never had anyone in my life who wasn't interested in my money or power. It's refreshing to work with someone who's just interested in the truth." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. "I'm just doing what's right," she replied. "But I appreciate your trust in me." As the days passed, Alex began to open up more about his personal life. He spoke of the loneliness at the top, the constant pressure to perform, and the difficulty in forming genuine relationships. "My daughter Sophie is the only real connection I have," he admitted one evening. "Everything else feels transactional." Emma found herself sharing too, about her struggles as a single mother, her dreams for Mia, and the daily challenges of making ends meet. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, they found common ground in their love for their children and their desire to make the world a better place. One afternoon, as Emma was leaving Alex's office after dropping off some documents, she ran into Sophie. The young girl, about Mia's age, looked at Emma curiously. "Are you the lady my dad's been working with?" Sophie asked. Emma nodded, surprised. "Yes, I am. My name's Emma." Sophie smiled. "Dad says you're very brave. Do you have any kids?" "I have a daughter about your age," Emma replied. "Her name is Mia." Sophie's eyes lit up. "Really? Maybe we could all have dinner sometime. Dad never brings friends home." Before Emma could respond, Alex appeared, looking slightly flustered. "Sophie, honey, shouldn't you be with your tutor?" As Sophie said goodbye and left, Alex turned to Emma with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry about that. Sophie can be direct." Emma shook her head. "It's fine. She seems like a lovely girl." There was a moment of awkward silence before Alex spoke again. "You know, Sophie's idea isn't bad. Maybe you and Mia would like to join us for dinner sometime? It might be nice for the girls to meet." Emma hesitated. The idea of their two worlds colliding felt strange, yet somehow right. "I'd like that," she found herself saying. "I'm sure Mia would too." As Emma left the building that day, she felt a mix of emotions. The investigation was progressing, bringing them closer to exposing the truth, but it was also bringing her closer to Alex in ways she hadn't anticipated. The lines between their professional and personal lives were blurring, and Emma wasn't sure how to feel about it. She thought about Mia and Sophie meeting, about sharing a meal with Alex outside of their clandestine meetings. It was a step into unknown territory, one that both excited and terrified her. As she walked home, Emma realized that this investigation wasn't just changing the company. It was changing her life in ways she never could have imagined. Emma and Alex decided it was time to take their findings to someone who could help make them public. They arranged a secret meeting with Jack Reeves, a respected investigative journalist known for exposing corporate corruption. The meeting was set for a small, nondescript cafe on the outskirts of the city. Emma arrived first, her heart racing as she scanned the room for any signs of trouble. Alex arrived a few minutes later, nodding to her as he took a seat at her table. Jack Reeves walked in shortly after, his weathered face serious as he approached them. "Mr. Carter," he said, shaking Alex's hand before turning to Emma. "And you must be Emma. I've heard a lot about you two." As they settled in, Alex and Emma began to lay out their evidence. They showed Jack the financial records, the emails, and the patterns of suspicious behavior they had uncovered. Jack listened intently, occasionally asking for clarification or more details. "This is big," Jack said, his eyes widening as he looked over a particularly damning document. "If what you're saying is true, this could bring down half the board of directors." Emma nodded, feeling a mix of pride and fear. "It's all true. We've triple-checked everything." As Jack was about to respond, the cafe door burst open. A group of men in expensive suits walked in, their faces set in grim expressions. Emma recognized two of them as the executives she had overheard in the office weeks ago. "Well, well," one of the men said, his voice dripping with disdain. "What do we have here? A little meeting of the whistleblowers?" Alex stood up, his face a mask of calm defiance. "Gentlemen, this is a private meeting. I suggest you leave." The lead executive, a man named Richard Harding, stepped forward. "Oh, I don't think so, Alex. We've been watching you for weeks. Did you really think we wouldn't notice your little investigation?" Emma felt a chill run down her spine. They had been so careful. How had they been discovered? Jack Reeves stood up as well, his reporter's instincts kicking in. "And who exactly are you, gentlemen? Care to comment on the allegations of financial fraud and corruption within your company?" Harding's face twisted into a sneer. "There are no allegations, just the desperate actions of a cleaner who doesn't know her place and a CEO who's lost his grip on reality." Emma felt anger rise within her. She stood up, her voice steady despite her fear. "I know exactly what my place is. It's standing up for what's right, no matter who it is that's doing wrong." The tension in the room was palpable. Other patrons in the cafe were watching the confrontation with a mix of curiosity and concern. Harding took a step towards Emma, his voice low and threatening. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, little girl. You should have kept your mouth shut and stuck to scrubbing toilets." Before anyone could react, Alex stepped between Emma and Harding. "That's enough," he said, his voice cold. "You're done, Richard. We have enough evidence to bury you and everyone involved in this scheme." Harding laughed, a harsh, mirthless sound. "Evidence? You mean the documents you stole? The private conversations you illegally recorded? Go ahead, take it to the authorities. See how far that gets you when our lawyers are done with you." Jack Reeves, who had been quietly recording the entire confrontation on his phone, spoke up. "I think the public might be very interested in hearing this story, regardless of what happens in court." Harding's face paled slightly, realizing the implications of having a journalist witness the confrontation. He composed himself quickly, straightening his tie. "This isn't over," he said, glaring at Emma and Alex. "You have no idea what you've started." With that, Harding and his associates left the cafe, leaving a tense silence in their wake. Emma let out a shaky breath, the reality of the situation hitting her. "What do we do now?" she asked, looking between Alex and Jack. Alex put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We keep going. They're scared, which means we're on the right track." Jack nodded in agreement. I'll start working on the story right away. But you two need to be careful. They're not going to take this lying down." As they left the cafe, Emma felt a mix of fear and determination. The confrontation had made the danger they faced all too real, but it had also strengthened her resolve. She had stood her ground, faced down the men who thought they could intimidate her into silence. Walking home, Emma realized that there was no turning back now. The next move would be crucial, and she knew she had to act fast. The safety of her daughter, the future of the company, and the pursuit of justice all hung in the balance. With a deep breath, Emma steeled herself for what was to come, knowing that the real battle was just beginning. Emma's phone rang as she was preparing dinner for Mia. Her heart raced when she saw it was an unknown number. With trembling hands, she answered. "Hello?" "You've been warned once," a distorted voice growled. "This is your last chance. Back off, or your daughter pays the price." The line went dead. Emma's legs gave out, and she sank to the floor, her mind reeling. This was no longer just about her. They had threatened Mia directly. "Mom? Are you okay?" Mia's voice came from the doorway, concern etched on her young face. Emma forced a smile, quickly getting to her feet. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just a little tired. How about we order pizza tonight?" As Mia cheered and ran off to choose toppings, Emma's mind raced. She needed to talk to Alex immediately. An hour later, after ensuring Mia was safely asleep, Emma met Alex in a secluded corner of a 24-hour diner. She recounted the threatening call, her voice shaking. Alex's face darkened with anger. "This has gone too far," he said, his fist clenching on the table. "We need to take immediate action to protect you and Mia." "What can we do?" Emma asked, fear and desperation evident in her voice. "I can't risk anything happening to Mia." Alex leaned forward, his voice low and determined. "I have a plan. I own a secure property outside the city. It's off the grid, impossible to trace. I want you and Mia to go there immediately." Emma's eyes widened. "Leave? But what about our investigation? What about your daughter, Sophie?" "Sophie will be fine. She has round-the-clock security," Alex assured her. "As for the investigation, we're close to breaking this wide open. Jack is ready to publish. We just need a little more time to ensure all our bases are covered legally." Emma nodded slowly, the reality of the situation sinking in. "How long would we need to be away?" "A week, maybe 2 at most," Alex replied. "I'll have my most trusted security team escort you there. You'll be safe, I promise." As they finalized the details, Emma felt a mix of relief and anxiety. The idea of hiding out felt like admitting defeat, but she knew it was necessary to protect Mia. The next morning, as Emma was packing a small bag for herself and Mia, her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Hi, Emma. Dad said you and Mia are going on a trip. Can Mia and I have a play date when you get back?" Emma smiled sadly at the message. In the midst of all this chaos, Sophie's innocent request was a stark reminder of the normal life they were fighting to protect. As she was about to reply, there was a knock at the door. Emma tensed, then relaxed when she heard Alex's voice. "Emma, it's me. Are you ready?" Opening the door, Emma was surprised to see not just Alex, but Sophie as well. The young girl rushed forward, enveloping Emma in a hug. "I wanted to say goodbye," Sophie said, her voice muffled against Emma's shirt. "And to give this to Mia." She held out a small, wrapped package. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, Sophie. I'm sure Mia will love it." Alex cleared his throat, clearly emotional himself. "We should get going. The security team is waiting downstairs." As they made their way to the waiting car, Mia clutching her backpack and looking confused, Emma felt the weight of their situation. She was about to uproot her daughter's life, to hide away from a threat she couldn't fully explain to Mia. "Mom, where are we going?" Mia asked as they settled into the car. "Why isn't Sophie coming with us?" Emma exchanged a glance with Alex, who nodded encouragingly. "We're going on a little adventure, sweetie," Emma said, forcing cheerfulness into her voice. "And when we come back, you and Sophie can have that play date, okay?" As the car pulled away from the curb, Emma watched the city blur past the windows. She thought about the life they were leaving behind, even if only temporarily. The small apartment that had been their home, Mia's school, her cleaning job, all of it felt like it belonged to another life now. But as she looked at Mia, who was already engrossed in opening Sophie's gift, Emma knew she was doing the right thing. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers they faced, protecting Mia was all that mattered. Emma caught Alex's eye in the rearview mirror. He gave her a reassuring nod, and she felt a surge of determination. They were in this together, and together they would see it through to the end. As the car sped towards the outskirts of the city, Emma took a deep breath. This was just a temporary setback, she told herself. Soon, they would return. The truth would be revealed, and justice would be served. With that thought, she pulled Mia closer, ready to face whatever came next. While Emma and Mia were safely tucked away at the secure location, Alex doubled down on the investigation. He spent long nights in his office, poring over documents and following money trails. It was during one of these late-night sessions that he stumbled upon a crucial piece of information. Alex's eyes widened as he stared at his computer screen. He had been digging into the background of Richard Harding, the executive who had confronted them at the cafe. What he found was shocking. Harding had a history that went far beyond corporate misdeeds. There were whispers of connections to organized crime, money laundering operations that spanned continents. Alex realized they weren't just dealing with corporate corruption. They were potentially facing off against a criminal enterprise. He immediately called Jack Reeves, the investigative journalist. "Jack, I've got something big. Can you meet me?" An hour later, they convened in Alex's office. As Alex laid out his findings, Jack's expression grew increasingly grave. "This is explosive, Alex," Jack said, scribbling notes furiously. "If we can prove these connections, it's not just the end of Harding's career. We're talking federal investigations, possible RICO charges." Alex nodded, his face set with determination. "We need to move fast. The longer we wait, the more time they have to cover their tracks, or worse." They spent the next few hours formulating a plan. They would need hard evidence to back up these allegations: bank records, communication logs, witness testimonies, anything that could corroborate the connection between Harding and his criminal associates. As dawn broke, Alex made a decision. "We need to confront Harding directly," he said, "at the company gala next week. It's our best chance to catch him off guard, maybe get him to slip up." Jack looked skeptical. "That's risky, Alex. These people are dangerous. They've already made threats against Emma and her daughter." "I know," Alex replied, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. "But we can't hide forever. Emma and Mia are safe for now, but we need to end this. For them, and for everyone else, these criminals have hurt." They spent the next few days preparing. Alex arranged for additional security at the gala, and Jack prepared a series of pointed questions designed to rattle Harding. They also reached out to a few trusted board members, discreetly informing them of the situation to ensure they had some backup within the company. The night of the gala arrived. The hotel ballroom was a sea of expensive gowns and tuxedos, the air filled with the chatter of New York's elite. Alex adjusted his tie, his eyes scanning the room for Harding. He spotted him near the bar, laughing with a group of executives. Taking a deep breath, Alex made his way over, Jack close behind. "Richard," Alex said, his voice cutting through the conversation, "we need to talk." Harding's smile faltered for a moment before he regained his composure. "Alex, Always a pleasure. And Mr. Reeves, I didn't realize the press was invited to our little soiree. Cut the act, Richard, Alex said, his voice low but firm. We know about your other business interests, the offshore accounts, the connections to the Moretti crime family. It's over. The color drained from Harding's face, but he quickly recovered. I don't know what you're talking about, Alex. Perhaps you've had too much champagne. Jack stepped forward, recorder in hand. Mr. Harding, would you care to comment on the allegations of your involvement in a multi-million-dollar money laundering operation? Harding's eyes darted around the room, clearly looking for an escape route. This is absurd. I won't stand here and listen to these baseless accusations. As Harding turned to leave, Alex grabbed his arm. Running away, Richard? That's not very becoming of a man of your stature. The tension in the air was palpable. Other guests had started to notice the confrontation, whispers spreading through the crowd. Harding's face contorted with anger. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Carter, he hissed. You think you can take me down? I've got friends in places you can't even imagine. That little cleaning lady of yours? Consider her days numbered. Alex's grip tightened on Harding's arm. That sounds an awful lot like a threat, Richard. Care to repeat that for Mr. Reeves's recorder? Suddenly, there was a commotion at the entrance to the ballroom. Emma burst in, her face flushed and determined. She had left Mia in the care of Alex's security team and returned to the city, unable to stay away from the fight any longer. As she approached the group, Harding's face twisted into a sneer. Well, well, the gang's all here. Ready to watch your world come crashing down, sweetheart? Emma stood tall, her voice steady as she addressed the now silent room. The only world crashing down is yours, Mr. Harding. We have the evidence, we have the witnesses, and now we have your confession. The ballroom erupted into chaos as security moved in to detain Harding. As he was led away, shouting threats and denials, Alex turned to Emma, a mix of relief and admiration on his face. I thought I told you to stay safe, he said, but there was no reproach in his voice. Emma smiled, the adrenaline of the moment still coursing through her. Since when do I just do what I'm told? We're in this together, remember? As the sound of sirens approached from outside, Alex, Emma, and Jack shared a look of triumph. The battle wasn't over, but they had won a crucial victory. The truth was finally coming to light, and with it, the promise of justice. The aftermath of the gala was a whirlwind of activity. Police swarmed the hotel, taking statements from shocked guests. Harding was led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of rage and defeat. Emma, Alex, and Jack found themselves in the center of a media storm, reporters clamoring for details of the scandal that had just broken wide open. As the night wore on, they retreated to Alex's office to regroup. The adrenaline of the confrontation was wearing off, replaced by a mix of exhaustion and nervous energy. What happens now? Emma asked, sinking into a chair. Alex ran a hand through his hair, his tie loosened and jacket discarded. Now we brace for impact. This is going to shake the company to its core. Jack was already on his phone, talking rapidly to his editor. The story's going to break in the morning edition. It's going to be front-page news across the country. As they discussed their next steps, there was a knock at the door. Alex's assistant poked her head in. Mr. Carter, the board is demanding an emergency meeting. They're on their way here now. Alex nodded, straightening his tie. It's showtime, he muttered. Within the hour, the boardroom was filled with agitated executives, all talking over each other. The tension in the room was palpable as Alex entered, followed by Emma and Jack. What is the meaning of this, Carter? One of the board members demanded. Do you have any idea of the damage you've done? Alex stood at the head of the table, his voice calm but firm. The damage was done long before tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We're here to start fixing it. He began to lay out the evidence they had gathered, detailing the extent of the corruption that had infected the company. Some board members looked shocked, others angry, and a few guilty. As Alex spoke, Emma watched the reactions around the room. She noticed one board member, an older man named Johnson, growing increasingly agitated. Just as Alex was wrapping up his explanation, Johnson stood up abruptly. "This is preposterous," he shouted. "You can't possibly expect us to believe this fairy tale. And who is she?" He pointed at Emma. "What right does a cleaning woman have to be part of this discussion?" Emma felt all eyes turn to her. For a moment, she felt small, out of place in this room of powerful executives. But then she remembered why she was there, why she had risked everything. She stood up, her voice steady. "My name is Emma, and I'm here because I believe in doing what's right. I may be a cleaning woman, but I was the one who uncovered this corruption. I was the one who had the courage to speak up when I saw something wrong." The room fell silent. Emma continued, her confidence growing. "I've seen how this company operates from the ground up. I've cleaned your offices, overheard your conversations, seen the documents you leave lying around. And let me tell you, the view from down there, it's not pretty." She turned to address the whole room. "This company doesn't just belong to you. It belongs to every employee, from the CEO to the janitor, and we all have a responsibility to ensure it operates with integrity." Alex stepped forward, standing beside Emma. "She's right. We've lost sight of what this company should stand for. It's time for a change, and it starts here, tonight." The board members exchanged glances, a mix of emotions playing across their faces. Some looked chastened, others thoughtful. Johnson, however, was not finished. "This is absurd," he sputtered. "You can't possibly think you can get away with this. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" Jack, who had been quietly recording the meeting, spoke up. "I think the question is, do you know who you're dealing with? The press, the police, and soon the public will all know about what's been happening here. The choice you have to make now is whether you want to be on the right side of this story." A tense silence fell over the room. Then, slowly, one of the younger board members stood up. "I think we need to listen to what Mr. Carter and Emma have to say. If what they're saying is true, we have a lot of work to do to set things right." Others began to nod in agreement. Johnson and a few others stormed out of the room, but the majority stayed, ready to hear more. As the meeting continued into the early hours of the morning, plans were made for a company-wide audit, new transparency measures, and a complete overhaul of the corporate structure. Emma felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had stood her ground, made her voice heard in a room where she never thought she'd have a place. As she caught Alex's eye across the table, she saw pride and something else, a warmth that made her heart skip a beat. As dawn broke over the city, Emma, Alex, and Jack left the office, tired but triumphant. The road ahead would be challenging, but they had taken the first crucial steps towards justice and change. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from the security team watching Mia. "Everything okay?" it read. Emma smiled, typing back a simple response. "Better than okay. We did it." The days following the confrontation at the gala and the emergency board meeting were a blur of activity. Emma and Alex found themselves at the center of a media storm, their faces splashed across newspapers and television screens. The story of the cleaning woman who exposed corporate corruption had captured the public's imagination. As they left Alex's building one evening, they were immediately surrounded by a group of reporters and photographers. Camera flashes blinded them as questions were shouted from all directions. "Emma, how does it feel to be hailed as a whistleblower hero?" "Mr. Carter, what's next for the company? Is it true that there's a romantic relationship between you two?" Alex instinctively put his arm around Emma, guiding her through the crowd towards a waiting car. Once inside, they both let out a sigh of relief. I don't think I'll ever get used to that, Emma said, her heart still racing. Alex gave her a sympathetic smile. It'll die down eventually, but for now, we need to be careful. Harding and his associates aren't going down without a fight. As if on cue, Emma's phone buzzed with a notification. It was a news alert. Richard Harding, released on bail, vows to fight charges. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Alex, look at this. Alex read the alert, his face hardening. We need to move fast. They're going to try to discredit us, maybe even worse. They spent the next few hours in Alex's penthouse, coordinating with their legal team and Jack Reeves. They needed to stay ahead of whatever Harding and his allies were planning. As night fell, Emma stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city. The lights twinkled below, a stark contrast to the darkness she felt closing in around them. Penny for your thoughts? Alex said, coming to stand beside her. Emma turned to him, her eyes filled with worry. I'm scared, Alex. Not for myself, but for Mia. What if they try to hurt her to get to us? Alex put his hands on her shoulders, his gaze steady. I promise you, Emma, I won't let anything happen to Mia. We're in this together, remember? As they stood there, the proximity between them charged with unspoken emotions, Emma's phone rang. It was an unknown number. With trembling hands, she answered. Hello? Ms. Walker, a deep voice said. I represent Mr. Harding. He has a proposition for you. Emma put the phone on speaker, exchanging a glance with Alex. I'm listening. Mr. Harding is willing to offer you a substantial sum of money in exchange for your silence. Retract your statements, and you and your daughter will be very well taken care of. Emma's voice was steel when she replied. Tell Mr. Harding he can keep his blood money. I'm not for sale. The voice on the other end grew cold. I urge you to reconsider, Ms. Walker. Things could get very unpleasant for you and your little girl if you don't cooperate. Before Emma could respond, Alex snatched the phone. Listen carefully, he growled. If anything happens to Emma or Mia, if they so much as stub a toe, I will personally ensure that Harding and everyone associated with him goes down. Do you understand me? There was a moment of silence before the line went dead. Emma sank onto the couch, her legs weak. They're not going to stop, are they? Alex sat beside her, taking her hand. No, they're not. But neither are we. Just then, there was a loud knock at the door. They both tensed, Alex moving protectively in front of Emma. He approached the door cautiously, looking through the peephole. To their surprise, it was Jack Reeves, looking disheveled and out of breath. Jack, what's going on? Alex asked as he let him in. Jack's eyes were wide with excitement. You're not going to believe this. I just got a call from an anonymous source. They say they have documents that prove Harding's connections to organized crime. Emails, bank statements, everything. Emma and Alex exchanged shocked looks. This could be the breakthrough they needed. Who's the source? Emma asked. Jack shook his head. They wouldn't say, but they want to meet. Tonight. Alex frowned. It could be a trap. Or it could be our chance to end this once and for all, Emma countered. They all looked at each other, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. Finally, Alex nodded. Okay, we'll go. But we're not taking any chances. I'm calling in extra security. As they prepared to leave, Emma felt a mix of fear and determination. They were walking into unknown territory, potentially facing grave danger. But they were also on the verge of uncovering the truth that could bring down Harding and his criminal empire for good. Emma took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. One way or another, this night would change everything. The meeting location was a dimly lit parking garage on the outskirts of the city. Emma, Alex, and Jack arrived in a nondescript car, flanked by two unmarked vehicles carrying Alex's security team. The tension was palpable as they waited, scanning the shadows for any sign of their mysterious informant. A figure emerged from behind a concrete pillar, face obscured by a hood. As the person approached, Emma's heart raced. The informant stopped a few feet away, hands raised to show they were unarmed. "Are you the ones looking for information on Harding?" a female voice asked. Alex stepped forward. "We are. Who are you?" The figure lowered her hood, revealing a familiar face. It was Sarah Jenkins, one of the executives who had been at the confrontation in the cafe. Emma gasped in surprise. "I've been working undercover for the FBI for the past year," Sarah explained, her voice low and urgent. "We've been building a case against Harding and his criminal network, but we needed someone on the inside to blow the whistle. That's where you came in, Emma." Emma's mind reeled. "You mean, you knew about me? About what I overheard?" Sarah nodded. "We've been watching you since that day. Your courage in coming forward gave us the opening we needed. But now, things have escalated beyond what we anticipated. Harding's desperate, and that makes him dangerous." She handed Jack a flash drive. "This contains everything you need to bring down Harding and his entire operation. Emails, financial records, recorded conversations, it's all there." As Jack pocketed the drive, the sound of screeching tires echoed through the garage. Headlights suddenly flooded the area, temporarily blinding them. "It's a trap!" Alex yelled, pulling Emma behind a nearby car. Gunshots rang out, bullets pinging off metal and concrete. Alex's security team returned fire, creating a chaotic crossfire in the enclosed space. In the midst of the chaos, Emma saw Sarah crumple to the ground, hit by a stray bullet. Without thinking, Emma darted out from behind cover, dragging Sarah to safety. "Emma, no!" Alex shouted, but it was too late. As Emma pulled Sarah behind a pillar, she felt a sharp pain in her arm. She'd been hit, but adrenaline kept her moving. The firefight seemed to last an eternity, but in reality, it was over in minutes. The sound of police sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. Harding's men retreated, leaving behind a scene of destruction. As the echo of the last gunshot faded, Emma slumped against the pillar, the pain in her arm intensifying. "Emma!" Alex was at her side in an instant, his face pale with worry. "You're hurt." Emma managed a weak smile. "It's just a graze. I'll be fine." Paramedics swarmed the scene, tending to Sarah and Emma. As she was being loaded into an ambulance, Emma saw FBI agents arriving, taking charge of the scene. Hours later, in a hospital room, Emma woke to find Alex asleep in a chair beside her bed, his hand holding hers. On the TV in the corner, a news anchor was reporting breaking news. In a stunning development, Richard Harding and several high-ranking executives have been arrested on charges of fraud, money laundering, and attempted murder. Sources say the arrests were made possible by evidence provided by an undercover FBI agent and the courageous actions of a whistleblower identified as Emma Walker, a former cleaning staff member. Emma squeezed Alex's hand, waking him. He looked up, relief flooding his face. "It's over," Emma said softly. "We did it." Alex nodded, his eyes shining with emotion. "You did it, Emma. You changed everything." As they sat there, the first light of dawn peeking through the hospital window, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been dangerous and difficult, but they had prevailed. In the days that followed, as Emma recovered and the full extent of Harding's crimes came to light, she found herself thrust into the spotlight as a symbol of courage and integrity. The company underwent a massive restructuring, with Alex at the helm, implementing sweeping changes to ensure transparency and ethical practices. Emma was offered a position on the company's new ethics board, a role she accepted with determination to make a real difference. Mia and Sophie became inseparable friends, their bond a symbol of the bridges built between worlds once thought unbridgeable. As for Emma and Alex, their shared ordeal had forged a deep connection. They took things slowly, both aware of the complexities of their situation, but neither could deny the growing feelings between them. One evening, as they stood on the balcony of Alex's penthouse, looking out over the city they had helped to change, Emma reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her here. "You know," she said, turning to Alex, "when I first overheard that conversation, I never imagined it would lead to all this." Alex smiled, taking her hand. "You showed us all what one person with courage and integrity can do. You changed not just the company, but all of our lives." As the sun set over New York, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Emma felt a sense of possibility she had never known before. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, she felt truly empowered to shape it. The city below bustled with life, each light in the windows representing a story, a struggle, a dream. Emma had shown that even the most unlikely person could make a difference, could stand up against injustice, and win. As she leaned into Alex's embrace, Emma knew that while this chapter of her story had come to an end, a new and exciting one was just beginning.